Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome everyone to NCSL's webinar, Tech Tools to Engage Constituents. My name is Natalie Wood and I'll be moderating the webinar today. I'm the Director of NCSL Center for Legislative Strengthening. The coronavirus pandemic has presented many new challenges for all of us. Among them, ways for legislators and staff to reach and communicate with constituents in a timely way. Today, we're going to hear about trends, best practices, and strategies for reaching out to constituents using technology. NCSL's webinars are a platform for information exchange and engagement. Over the next hour, we encourage you to participate through our chat box. Please type your questions and comments in the chat, which is in the lower left-hand side of your screen. If you'd like, you can try out that chat function now by entering the state from which you are calling. We love to do roll call here at NCSL. The presentations for today's webinar are available to view and download under the tab on your screen labeled Resources. Under the tab labeled Speakers, you'll find the biographies of today's presenters, and you can access these tabs at any time during our presentations. Also, this webinar is being recorded and will be available on NCSL's website within the week. For those of you not familiar with us at NCSL, we are the bipartisan organization serving the legislatures and legislative staff of the states, commonwealths, and territories. We provide research, technical assistance, and opportunities for policymakers to engage ideas on the most pressing state issues, and also we serve as an advocate for the interests of the states in the American federal system. We're very pleased to have with us today 6 presenters who will share ideas and useful information about how to reach out to constituents, particularly in these challenging times. I'd like to take a quick opportunity to thank our speakers for being with us today. For the first part of our webinar, we'll hear from Senator Kristen Phillips-Hill of Pennsylvania and Drew Volturo, Communications Director for the House Democratic Caucus in Delaware. Following that, we'll hear briefly from Nathan Trail, Director of Technology Policy and State Legislative Affairs at the Consumer Technology Association. He'll introduce the speakers for the second part of the session. Jimena Hartstock, co-founder of Phone to Action, Scott Hogue, Director for AT&T's Public Sector Channel Marketing, and Denise Winkler, Strategic Business Executive for Social Services for Google Cloud. Before we begin, I'd like to recognize CTA. Thank you for your platinum sponsorship of the NCSL Foundation and for being so helpful in putting together the slate of private sector experts. Our first speaker is Senator Kristen Phillips-Hill of Pennsylvania. Senator, thank you for being with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you, and so great to see where everyone's from. I see several fellow Pennsylvanians, and really wonderful to have them on board. So I'm Senator Kristen Phillips-Hill, and I have the honor of chairing the Pennsylvania Senate's Committee on Communications and Technology. And want to just tell you a little bit about Pennsylvania's 28th Senatorial District. I represent the southern half of York County, Pennsylvania, in south central Pennsylvania, right along the Mason-Dixon line. The heart of the district is about 45 minutes north of the city of Baltimore and about 35 minutes south of the capital city, Harrisburg. We have 48 municipalities, 11 school districts, 262,000 plus constituents. I serve a 4-year term. And even before this pandemic, my goal was to connect with as many constituents as possible in the most cost-effective way, always respecting those people who pay our bills. And now with the pandemic and one of the most restrictive economic shutdowns in the United States, Pennsylvania is facing some significant financial challenges, which makes connecting digitally even more important now. Connecting with a large population presents some challenges, and connecting digitally means that we can do that with very low to no additional cost incurred by taxpayers. It's really important to avoid those high-cost traditional ways that legislators connect, and they're expensive events, and you know what that entails, right? Rent a facility, food, resources, newsletters. You know, we used to print them and mail them at great cost. So our ability to connect with our constituents makes us that much more effective as legislators, and making more frequent contacts with our constituents creates those conversations that make us effective. And I think one of the most important parts of connecting digitally is the data that we are able to gather. We can track and we can measure our metrics. We can check to see what's effective. We can look at those issues that are really important to the people that we represent. So there are a lot of different digital tools that we can use, and one of those that I found to be particularly effective is e-newsletters. So e-newsletters we distribute through the Senate Republican Caucus's use of an internal email distribution system. Some people use other methods like MailChimp. Typically, send one out at least once per week. My goal is always to get it out the door and into people's inboxes before I leave on Friday afternoon. But during the COVID-19 pandemic, we've been sending some weeks at least one a day, on average about 3 per week. And we can track the open rates of the emails. It's really pretty incredible. Constituents really have a thirst right now for reliable information. There's so much misinformation out there, and that e-newsletter is a way of making sure that your constituents get reliable information in their email box from you. And we're seeing upwards of a 60% open rate on some email updates. To give you a sense, the industry average for government officials in terms of their open rate is about 15 to 20%. So we found it to be a really effective way. And one of the things I will say is that you can curate your list. Make sure that it's accurate. Take the time to eliminate those emails that are not going through, and you will have people who are truly interested in the information that you send out. One of the other digital tools that we have found really effective and very reasonable in terms of cost has been to do a podcast. Now, as a mother of 3 children who's been married for over 30 years, initially when staff brought this idea to me, I looked at them and said, "You mean somebody actually wants to listen to me for 20 minutes at a clip? That's amazing." So we began doing podcasts. We host them on SoundCloud. It fully plugs in on WordPress websites, and it gives us the opportunity to discuss relevant topics, to augment legislative efforts. But what I found to be the most effective way to use a podcast is to address really challenging issues. So the example that comes to my mind is that I represent a district that has a major interstate that goes right through it. We've been doing a lot of transportation construction projects, updating interchanges, and one of those is the infamous Mount Rose interchange, which has been a source of great anger in my district. I inherited the project. It's been in construction for well over 2.5 years. So we interviewed the PennDOT district executive, and we had him review the projects that are proposed in our Senate district. And the really neat thing about it was when people were upset about the issue, I could respond to them and I could say, here's a link. You can listen to my interview with the PennDOT district executive. And when I sent that out in an email response, I had absolutely no response from constituents who were either upset or frustrated. If I got any response back, it was, "Thank you, this is really wonderful." And the other neat thing about this is, I interviewed the president of York College. She pushed it out onto her media platforms and to the people who follow her, which has really built the audience for the information that I put out. And I've found it to be a really effective way to further build those people who follow you and who you can connect with, because we know that the more people we connect with that we represent, the more effective we are. So I'm sure that everyone has been engaging with Zoom or Microsoft Teams or some other platform to conduct regular meetings. And we have laughed that the song of this spring is Who's Zooming Who by Aretha Franklin, because we never thought that it would be a regular part of our life. But we truly are conducting regular meetings with key stakeholders in our district. It has been a way to reach out to local business associations, our local York County Economic Alliance, sort of like the Chamber of Business and Industry, school district superintendents, county and local elected officials, state representatives, other Senate colleagues, and we actually have used it for long before the pandemic began to meet digitally with our staff. I have district office staff and I have Harrisburg staff. And, you know, it's a way to make sure that everyone's engaged in meetings without having to bill the taxpayer for mileage. So it's been a really effective tool, whether we're meeting with staff, lobbyists, or other individuals. And then one of the things that I have found incredibly helpful is doing surveys on our website. So we host surveys on our legislative website, put them out through links on other social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, and we get a massive amount of information from constituents who maybe wouldn't be inclined to engage with you. And it helps us capture quality data, including emails that you can further push more information out. And it helps you to gauge interest on important topics. Sometimes there are topics that are really difficult, or controversial. And this is a way to gauge your constituents' interest, support, opposition. And what I really like about it is that it helps me to see who's in my district and who's not in my district. Now, I care what people in Pennsylvania think generally. I really care about what the people in my district think. So being able to weed out that person from Lancaster or Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Scranton, Erie is really helpful for me, because ultimately, at the end of the day, I am in Harrisburg to be the voice and do the will of the people of my district, and really helps me to connect with new constituents and really get a sense of where they are on some difficult issues. Did a survey on Sunday hunting. It was a particularly controversial issue across the state, and really to see where my constituents landed on the issue helped me be a person who forged a compromise on that legislation and helped get it over the finish line. One of the things that I really value about digital tech tools are social media outlets, and being able to look at the analytics. Facebook, Twitter, they all have insights, and it can give you a sense of, when people are paying attention, what you've been posting, what's been going on. And as you can see that new followers have really increased greatly during the COVID-19 pandemic. And, social media platforms give you that ability to share up-to-date materials, whether they're coming out of the executive branch, the legislative branch, or local governmental entities. And, particularly during the pandemic, things were changing hour by hour. So it was really up to date and, got people right where they were at home on their computer. And similar to email updates, constituents really do want to have updates from their local representatives. And lastly, I would say capturing and analyzing data measuring what you do, reviewing constituent casework and issues. I can tell you, I can just look and see when we've been the busiest, what issues have been really relevant, and I can track website traffic, social media analytics, tracking email open rates based on subject line. We've even been able to take the data, manipulate it, and figure out what the best time to send email updates are. So I see that there was a question there. Do you want me to take those now or move on to the next presenter?
Senator, let's give Drew a chance, and we have some time. This is Natalie Wood again. We have some time at the end of your remarks and his remarks to answer some questions.
Fantastic.
So keep them coming in. Thank you so much. Your remarks were terrific. Great information. Please keep the questions coming in the chat. With that, I will next turn it over to Drew Volterra.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. My name is Drew Volterra. I have been the communications director for the House Democratic Caucus here in Delaware since 2009. I oversee, just so you, for a way of quick background, I oversee a staff of 4, that's including myself, and we are responsible for providing communication strategy to 26 state representatives. That is everything from press releases to opinion pieces, talking points, photos, videos, managing their social media feeds, you name it, we do it from top to bottom. We might have some specialties, but we also consider ourselves Jacks and Jills of all trades because we have a small staff and a very diverse group of members. Before that, I spent 8 years as a local and state government reporter for a small daily paper here in the state capitol. One thing I did want to say is that communications has changed a lot since I took over as communications director here. In 2009, we communicated mainly through traditional forms of communication, traditional media, press releases, publishing op-eds, and submitting photographs to community newspapers. We didn't have a Facebook account. We didn't have a Twitter account. I don't even know if Instagram existed at that time. So for those of you who have been in this type of role for several years, that might sound familiar. To some of you who are newer to the field, that might seem like an alien world to you. Just by way of telling you a little bit about Delaware, and this will be relevant in a couple seconds, Delaware is a small state. We have fewer than 1 million people. Whereas Senator Phillips Hill's district had 250,000 people, we have about 950,000 in our entire state. We have about 25,000 people living in each House district. You can drive north-south the length of the state in 2.5 hours. At its widest, it's 35 miles. At its narrowest, it's 9 miles. The reason I tell you that is with our small districts, there is always overlap with our communications efforts. And also, we really, in Delaware, rely on a lot of hands-on, face-to-face communication. People expect to be able to run into their state legislator at the grocery store. People expect to be able to knock on their door or to see them at community meetings and civic association meetings on a regular basis. So the coronavirus pandemic has created many unique challenges for us. It takes away a lot of the typical ways that we interact with our constituents and the public at large. We can't do those face-to-face meetings, the civic associations, community events, picnics, parades, constituent coffees. We can't hold press conferences in the traditional fashion to introduce legislation. So it creates, at the same time, it creates a bigger demand on services, which then we also have to try to communicate to our constituents. Thankfully, if this had happened in 2009, where we are right now, trying to utilize only traditional media, we would really have our backs up against the wall. But with those changes that have happened in the last 9-10 years, it's really provided us a lot of opportunities to fill in some of those gaps. And I want to talk about some of the tools of the trade that we do use here in Delaware and what we have been using for the last 2.5 months. None of these methods by themselves are the solution. Rather, all of them working together, layering our communications, have helped us keep in touch with our residents and keep them informed. I want to start with Facebook. Facebook is probably the most popular method. 70% of Americans use Facebook regularly. 3/4 of those people use Facebook daily. So it is definitely our go-to when it comes to communicating information quickly, and we use it several different ways. One way we do is we use it is to share agency and governor posts directly. So whenever we receive an update, we try to share that information either across our caucus page or the individual members' pages, or both. That allows us to basically amplify vital and pertinent information directly to our constituents that they otherwise might not see. We can't rely on them seeing it in a newspaper or on a television broadcast. So we take that role very seriously in being able to help amplify that information and making sure maybe they saw it at a glimpse earlier, but then they see it a second time from us. Another method is original content. Whether it's using Facebook Live or posting more local news, we look to share anything that can be of use for our constituents directly with them. A couple of great examples related to the coronavirus pandemic is local testing events, local food bank mobile pantry events. Those sorts of things are really important, we feel, to share directly with our constituents. And when we get information or we get a notice about that, we look to immediately share that on our Facebook page and through other methods that I'll talk about in a couple minutes. I want to mention another feature we use for original content that we find very, very useful. It's a service called Biteable. I don't know if anyone is familiar with that, but Biteable is basically an online service that provides you with thousands of stock video footage clips that you can then turn around and put together short videos that you can then share pertinent information to your constituents. One of the things we've found is that when you're posting on social media, you want to use it as a very visual medium, not just putting words on the page. So we will turn around and use this service, Biteable, to create a visual representation of what we want to communicate. A great example is Delaware just entered its phase 1 economic recovery on June 1st. And there were a whole series of changes that came as a result of that. We had businesses reopening, state parks reopening, short-term rentals restarting, larger gatherings allowed to take place again. So we could have written that all out as a long post, but what we did is we made a video explaining it and then directed people to a website for more information. We felt, if nothing else, if they watched the 45-second video, they would at least have a basic understanding of what it was. And I just saw the question pop up. It's called Biteable, Biteable, if that answers Susan's question and Lauren's. It's been really useful to us. I think it costs us about $150 a year, and we have pretty much unlimited access to the clips that are out there. Another way that we've used Facebook is Facebook Live itself. Normally, our legislators would interact directly with constituents at civic association meetings, or we could produce videos for them. Facebook Live we've been able to use for town halls. We set up the events. We boost them in the members' districts using Facebook's own advertising apparatus. And then when it comes time for the event, we go live. We have a staff person sitting remotely who's able to basically ferret through the questions that come up in the live chat and send them directly to the legislator on a second screen while they're doing the Facebook Live, so they're able to provide real-time answers to their constituents. Another way that we've used Facebook Live is some legislators that are a little more confident will take their phone with them, take their phone out, and put it on themselves while they're out at an event like a COVID testing event or a food bank mobile pantry. And that has been another way to keep their face and keep their name out there, and at the same time communicate pertinent information. Senator Phillips Hill mentioned e-newsletters earlier. That is also something we have been using. We send a daily e-newsletter to all our email contacts across all 26 representatives. So all constituents receive the same communication every day so that there is no one is left out in our state. Generally sharing stuff from the governor, the Division of Public Health, the Division of Unemployment Insurance, Division of Small Business. That has been also a pretty good method to communicate with people. It picks up the gap of people who might not use Facebook regularly. Another resource that we created very early on. We recognized that the information was changing on a daily basis. And to accommodate that, and rather than just constantly posting updates, we created what we call a website resource portal. We created a website where, and I will put it in the audience chat when I'm done speaking, we created a resource portal where people can go and basically scroll through and get any kind of information they need. We're talking about things from public health, employment updates, food distribution, local and county resources, school information, even mental health and substance abuse hotlines. We found that a lot of these agencies, a lot of these offices were updating their information regularly, so we figured this would be a good aggregator to collect all those website links, put them in one place, and then we have one link that we share on all of our communications. That has been very helpful to us and allowing us to share that information repeatedly but easily. One of the last things I wanted to mention really briefly was Zoom, the use of Zoom in conference calls. I actually have one coming up in a couple of days with one of my state representatives using the video conferencing feature, reaching out to, what we did is we've started reaching out to civic association leaders or business owners in each member's districts, creating a list of them and then inviting them to join a Zoom call and interacting and having a direct dialogue. So rather than the Facebook Live where people can only communicate by typing a message in during the live stream, you actually have that dialogue back and forth, that face-to-face interaction. We try to use good practices to avoid Zoom bombing, such as sending the Zoom link out only a day or two before the actual event and making sure people have registered ahead of time, the civic association leaders, and asking that they not share it broadly. And we think that that has worked pretty well for us so far. We also encourage our legislators to make direct phone calls to constituents. Again, because we have such small districts, people do expect to hear from their legislators. So just picking up the phone and making a few phone calls here and there to check in with constituents, check in with civic leaders, has been also a very useful way of communicating with people. We also have a podcast as well. And one of the things we found was we talked to public health officials to communicate information directly to them. We talked to our state legislators so they could talk directly to a larger audience and talk to them about what they're doing during this lockdown. We heard a lot that we weren't doing anything because people just didn't see us working. The people that weren't asking for help weren't really aware of what we were doing. So we felt that that was another way to communicate directly with people. So that really does sum up a lot of what I have. I'm going to cut myself off right there so that way we can field any questions that have come up. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Drew. That was awesome information, and I see your colleagues in the Senate are backing you up about how great you are too. So I like that nice interchamber love going on in the chat. A couple questions, as you can see, have come through, and one for the senator. How do you know that the people who are responding to your communications are from your district?
So we send them through my website, senatorkristen.com, and we ask them to provide their name, their address, and their email address. And, you know, like I said, I'm always interested in what Pennsylvanians are thinking, but of course have to make my votes based on the views and values of the people in my district. So that's the way that we go about curating that type of information. So there was another question, I believe, about, how do we collect our constituents' information. And I think the best way is to have people reach in to you and provide that information to you, because then you know that the people who are reaching out truly are interested in that information, as opposed to, buying lists and things like that. So we actually prefer that they come to us and seek to receive information, and we do that by soliciting interest through social media, through Facebook and Twitter and Instagram.
Thank you for that response. Drew, feel free to tag in there if you see something on that question that you'd like to respond to as well. I'm also going to lay another one on the table around Zoom, and there's a question in the chat about, do you mute Zoom participants? Really interesting question given these times, given the public meetings laws and access by the public to the legislative process. Anyone have thoughts on that?
I think if it's an official meeting, we generally would ask people to mute unless they've been recognized to speak. For more of a civic association type of meeting, maybe just kind of hope to operate on the honor system a little bit, that people speaking one at a time, just reminding people that if everybody talks over each other, no one is heard. It's generally worked pretty well. I mean, if you have to mute people, if the admin has to or host has to mute people so that somebody is heard and has to raise their hand to be called on, then that's what we would do in that situation. But you would obviously prefer that people just kind of respect each other and respect that everybody deserves the opportunity to speak.
Essentially, we've operated the same way as well. Most people are very polite and respectful. We've not really had those issues, other than having to ask folks to please remember to mute themselves, again, so you don't hear barking dogs and conversations with children. So.
I'm familiar with that phenomenon with my new work life balancing act that I'm doing. So yes, I think we can all relate. Let's keep the questions coming in the chat. We have a great second half to our webinar. And so I want to make sure we leave ample time to hear from our next slate of presenters. We'll have time at the end for further questions, and I'll be looking in the chat as well. So next up, I am going to turn things over to CTA, the Consumer Technology Association, and Nathan Trail, as I mentioned, the Director of Technology Policy and State Legislative Affairs at CTA, to introduce our next panelist. Nathan?
Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone for joining today and to NCSL for hosting. I also want to thank Senator Phillips Hill and Drew for sharing the innovative ways that they've embraced technology to address the needs of their constituents. As stated before, my name is Nathan Trail. I'm the Director of Technology Policy and State Legislative Affairs at CTA. I've worked with some of you before, but for those who I haven't, CTA is North America's largest trade association. Our members are the world's leading innovators, from startups to global brands, all of which help to support more than 18 million American jobs. CTA also owns and produces CES, which is the largest and most influential tech event in the world. At this point, I think we're all very much aware of how we need to adapt due to COVID-19 and the challenges that we face in recovery. And I'm sure you're all receiving several emails and calls a day about what's needed from you as legislators to make this happen, but we wanted to take the time to be a resource to you and to help show how technology can help you do your job effectively as a legislator during quarantine and as we look to recovery, and as many states are looking to reopen under new guidelines. We've all had to adapt to this situation, and we want to show how technology can help. This is a time where we're all made very much aware of how necessary technology is in keeping businesses and governments running, and more importantly, in keeping us all connected. Additionally, how important it is to support legislation and regulations that allow for innovations and technology that thrives so that our businesses and innovators can adapt and quickly solve problems that arise. We've seen virtual care provide medical care to people without the need to travel to the doctor's office. Telework has kept businesses operational, governments are able to quickly and effectively share information to constituents through social media and mailing services, as Senator Phillips Hill touched on earlier. We've been able to stay entertained and sane through streaming entertainment services while we're at home. Delivery platforms are helping to deliver much-needed household supplies and foods, as well as keeping local businesses afloat. And we're also embracing new ways to solve problems, like incorporating blockchain into supply chains to increase efficiency and reduce shortages. CTA and our member companies are committed to being a resource during this time, and we have 3 outstanding CTA member companies on today who will give an overview of how their technologies can help during COVID-19 and as we look to transition to reopening, and how to stay in touch with constituents during this time. First, we'll have Yamina Hartstock from Phone to Action, who will give an overview of how constituents are changing their communication habits. She will also discuss trends and patterns of engaging between constituents and lawmakers during this time of quarantine, the technologies and new apps constituents are embracing, and tips and tools for lawmakers to engage with constituents. Then we'll have Scott Hogue from AT&T, who will give an overview of voice and collaboration solutions for state legislators and how they can address the need for remote work in today's environment and beyond. Then we'll have Denise Winkler from Google, who will discuss how technology can support overwhelmed social service agencies and deliver customer services with artificial intelligence and machine learning to constituents' need of answers, and to better support state employees that are trying to address constituent needs. Again, thank you so much for being on, and with that, I'll hand it over to Amanda.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me today. My name is Jimena Hartstock, co-founder of the software company Phone to Action. We build tools for civic participation, get out the vote, and corporate responsibility. We also build integrations with applications like Facebook, Twitter, and many others. Before showing you some ideas of technologies lawmakers can adopt, I want to share with you 3 background points. First, during the pandemic, we have seen a tremendous increase in digital engagement at Phone to Action. Our clients who are nonprofits, trade associations, and others are embracing technology to inspire their members to act, and people are taking action in massive ways. They want to connect with you, with the lawmakers. The new normal for sure is going to require the lawmakers to increase interaction with constituents through technology. Another point is to consider is the rise of a new actor we call the new citizen. We have been studying advocate engagement, and we have found the emergence of this new type of constituent, over-informed, digital savvy, connected rather than collected. In the past, individuals waited for organizations like unions or political parties, university groups to organize them. Today, everyone can be an organizer. Empowered by their personal stories and their access to technology, this new type of constituent that you see today, online and offline, has other expectations in the way they want to communicate with lawmakers. For reference, I want to show you the different technologies this new citizen is embracing. Last year, we saw protests all over the world from Hong Kong to Chile, similar to what we're seeing in the US now. These are the applications the organizers use. Please, if you look at those, WhatsApp leads with 1.5 billion users a month. This was one of the top technologies used last year, but also apps like Telegram and Signal being used massively right now in the US. Similarly, in the US, these are the apps that are being used in the protests online and offline, and not just only in the protests, but also other mobilizations. I would like to highlight the application Signal. You are probably familiar already with some of the others, but Signal is an encrypted app that has become the #1 messenger app downloaded in the US in the past 2 weeks. I'm showing you this app for background only, so you can see how resourceful constituents are getting regarding the use of technology for civic participation. Now, here are some suggestions of apps and technologies lawmakers can use to connect with constituents. First, SMS keywords. Text message is not a new technology. It's actually 28 years old. But because it's available in every phone and does not need downloading, it has the largest penetration in the United States at 100%. You can get a keyword under your name, like many candidates do, and use it widely to get people to sign up to your list. Then you can send them a text message to invite them to events or to share information with them. 90% of texts are read in the first 3 minutes, and as from to action in the past weeks, we have seen completion rates of as high as 34%, very, very effective. Messenger apps are similar to SMS, but require downloads on smartphones. Luckily, 85% of Americans have a smartphone. I want to highlight Facebook Messenger because it's the most widely used app in the United States. In Facebook Messenger, you can do a lot of things, but I want to highlight some of the new features. You can create now rooms for conversations up to 50 people in a very similar way you use apps like Zoom or WhatsApp, Zoom or WebEx, but easier because you do not need dial information. This is a new feature that Facebook just launched a few weeks ago in May. Messenger bots are also interesting. Those are visual assistants that can help you engage constituents when they visit your page. You train the bot to provide different answers depending on the constituent's needs. Here is an example of a bot we created for the American Heart Association. The bot is embedded in the American Heart website and Facebook page. I would also like to highlight WhatsApp. This map shows you penetration of apps worldwide. WhatsApp is in green, and as you can see, is the most popular across the globe. Also, if you have Hispanic constituents, this is the one app Hispanics use every day. It is encrypted and has a lot of cool features. It's perfect for small meetings. You can call a constituent and turn the video and add people as you choose. You can also create a group to share information, not for chatting, but a group that you moderate and control. Here is an example. For example, I don't know if you can see it on the right side of a chat. Really, it's a group created by the director of the Office of Latino Affairs for Mayor Bowser in Washington, D.C. She created this group and posts every day, keeping people informed about COVID and anything else. You can look at this the same way as you look at as Zoom is another way of a Zoom type of meeting. It's moderated, but you use it only to share information. Finally, there are several technologies for virtual legislative visit and town halls. We heard from Senator Philip Hill on how these conference apps like WebEx and Zoom have become the new normal. Besides the traditional use, I recommend you also try the breakout room feature that is excellent to hold a scheduled meeting. You can move yourselves to different rooms where your constituents are, just like you would do if you're meeting physically with constituents. You just need somebody to help you manage the system so you can switch between rooms. When you do webinars now, if you keep the chat feature open, that's another very interesting way to have, your constituency engaged. We did a case study with Consumer Reports, and they had 700 people starting the webinar and ending the webinar, and they believe the success was related to having two people managing the chat during the conversation, so people felt that they were engaged. I think it's very similar to what's happening now in this conversation, that people are engaging, and if the chat was mute, people feel a little bit kind of out of the conversation. Drew talked about great ways to use Facebook Live and how Facebook, has really taken the lead on that for years now. But now, Facebook has a really new super cool feature. It's called Facebook Live With or Live With. And this allows you to invite someone else to do the session with you anywhere. This is perfect if the lawmaker wants to do something fun for your constituents. And you can also add a donate button now, which is perfect for fundraisers for candidates, during this election with the Live With of the Facebook Live alone. To summarize, there is no better time to try new technologies with constituents than now. Your constituents are engaging with organizations they trust for news and advocacy. These organizations, like CTA, can be great partners to engage with your constituents, and that is another way of meeting people where they are. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think we'll next hear from Scott Hogue.
Hey, thank you so much, Natalie, and I appreciate the opportunity to share for just a few minutes today about voice and collaboration, seeing as, it's always critical, but certainly in the time that we're in now. And we've had a few references already to different platforms, Zoom, WebEx, others, and, we're using another one for this webinar. So there are multiple solutions. However, I would give an analogy. Imagine that you're going somewhere and you need a vehicle. However, depending on where you're going and maybe what you're doing, it might determine what type of vehicle you select. So if you're going somewhere alone, maybe a small sedan would do. Whereas if you're going to pick up a large piece of furniture, perhaps you might need a pickup truck. Or if you're traveling across the country on a family vacation, then a minivan or an SUV might be what's needed. So we can all relate to the fact that, various factors can impact what choices we make. And the same is true when it comes to selecting the voice and collaboration solution that is right for you and exactly what you're trying to accomplish. I'm going to briefly highlight three separate voice and collaboration solutions that AT&T offers and just give you a few highlights around each. So I will tell you to begin with that each of these solutions are cloud-based. So what that does is it reduces infrastructure expenses, travel expenses, and has been shown to increase productivity. I think we all can relate to the fact that cloud-based solutions are becoming more and more prevalent in our world today. So the three that I'm going to highlight are AT&T Conferencing with Zoom, which is, we all know Zoom right now is the fastest growing. It's extremely simple and can provide a lot of the functionality that you need to conduct effective meetings and collaborating both with your colleagues as well as your constituents. The next one is AT&T Office at Hand. Think of this as a full phone system that can ring on all your devices simultaneously so that you never miss a call. It also replaces your old phone system and can make you highly effective, and I can share a little bit more of that in a second. The final one is WebEx with AT&T. So WebEx is the market leader today. It's very feature-rich. It also has a FedRAMP compliant option, which I know is very important in the public sector. And then finally, more people within your organization can host a meeting. So I'll start with AT&T Conferencing with Zoom. And of course, in short, Zoom provides a complete video conferencing solution that helps you collaborate more effectively. It's very easy and simple. It's interoperable with other systems and very affordable. It can support up to 1,000 video participants. It's engineered and optimized to work reliably, and it's easy to use with an easy, intuitive interface. And there's minimal training that's required. So again, Zoom, very simple, simplistic solution that can help you be highly effective and accomplish a lot of your goals, especially if you're doing things like webinars, or meetings with your constituents. The second one is the AT&T Office at Hand solution that I mentioned that can literally replace your old phone system. It's highly secure, it's cloud-based, it's cost-effective, and it has feature-rich tools for voice and collaborations. So it allows employees to work virtually anywhere. They can connect near seamlessly on almost any device and collaborate more effectively. It provides audio conferencing for up to 1,000 participants with HD video conferencing for up to 100 simultaneous participants. It's highly secure, and it provides voice, fax, and messaging as well. So you can see this one solution as a cloud-based solution can replace all of the hardware, PBX systems, things like that you might have back at your office. So this is something to consider when we talk about as things maybe go back to whatever the new normal looks like. You're back in your office and you're looking to do something more current and more effective for you. And then the final one is the WebEx with AT&T. Very feature-rich, interactive meeting solution with inherent security, and it has a FedRAMP compliant option, which again is critical. One of the features I love is you can enter your phone number in the system, and whenever you're connecting to a WebEx meeting, it literally will just call you to connect you from an audio standpoint, so you don't have to enter in passcode every time, dial a toll-free number, and things like that. So again, these three solutions, Zoom, the fastest growing, simple to use, provides a lot of functionality. The WebEx with AT&T, which is the market leader, feature-rich and FedRAMP compliant option, and the Office in Hand option, which is a full phone system that rings on all your devices simultaneously and can replace your old and outdated system. So these are just three communication collaboration solutions for you to consider. And I really appreciate the time today to share these options with you for your consideration for collaborating with your colleagues and constituents. So thank you.
Thank you, Scott, for that information. And I think, Denise, you're up next.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me today. Let me advance the slides. As all of you know, the socioeconomic impacts of COVID are putting an enormous strain on state safety net agencies. As of this morning, we had 44 million citizens apply for unemployment in 12 weeks, and it's going to take time to get them back to work. So we'll see a continued reliance on safety net programs, and your constituent needs are going to change as it evolves. So it's going to impact these programs not just once, but in a series of waves. And with the reduction in state revenue, your agencies will need to continue to serve a really unprecedented number of constituents with limited resources and in some cases less resources. And this is impacting not just constituents, it's also impacting state staff as well. As web portals and call centers slowed under the demand, citizens simply couldn't engage or access services. And at the same time, state staff were often struggling to manage workloads and answer questions or even engage. At Google, our technology, specifically cloud technology, can enable state agencies and local agencies to rapidly implement solutions to manage this volume and enable your constituents to engage and access critical services cost effectively. Cloud technology is ideal for this type of challenge because it can scale up in seconds, which traditional IT structures often can't do. And it can do it quickly and cost effectively. And when I say rapidly implement, I'm talking days and weeks, not months. So this slide represents several of the solutions that Google Cloud has implemented to help states and local government organizations serve their constituents. The virtual waiting room. The Texas Workforce Commission saw their weekly unemployment applications and claims go from 10,000 a week to almost 500,000 a week. Their portal couldn't handle the volume. So using cloud, we created a virtual waiting room. Essentially, we stood up a new web page in front of their portal to throttle traffic to the website so it didn't slow or crash. But more importantly, it informed and calmed Texans. It had a clock to let them know how long they would have to wait in order to apply. We brought forward their frequently asked questions, and we stood up a virtual agent to enable their citizens to ask questions 24/7. Rapid application development. The state of New York was experiencing a 1,000% increase in unemployment applications, and the sites were crashing. We developed and implemented in less than a week an online module to take applications for both pandemic unemployment and traditional unemployment. The module took over 100,000 applications in the first 24 hours and has taken 1.2 million applications to date. And virtual agents. The state of Illinois, we implemented a virtual agent on their unemployment portal and in their call center. A virtual agent answers questions automatically. In the first 2 weeks, the agent answered 3.2 million inquiries. It's currently handling about 180,000 inquiries per day on both the web and call centers. And they're going to expand the agent to automatically complete routine tasks like change my password, what's the status of my application, enabling them to redeploy resources to higher value tasks. And with all these solutions, data analytics is there to give you insight into your constituents' questions and concerns across all these solutions. And as we move into recovery, we're using big data, artificial intelligence, and Google Meet to help states engage constituents and get people back to work. Artificial intelligence to match citizens to jobs, Google Meet to support virtual interviews and virtual skills training. Helping states to reopen transportation, universities, and colleges. Our focus at Google is to help your constituents engage and access critical services and information in a timely and compassionate way so our communities can recover. At the same time, we want to help states use cost-effective modern technology to use their limited resources in the most effective way possible. Thanks for having me this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Denise, for your remarks. Thanks again to all our presenters. I encourage you once again to please use the chat. I've been putting in some NCSL resources and some examples from other legislatures on the question about soliciting public input and comment during the age of COVID-19. A few other questions that I know that Drew actually was moving on as Delaware had a virtual session today, and so I don't think he's with us anymore. But Senator, if you have any comments about any use of different platforms, I know TikTok came up in the chat. Any thoughts on blocking or deleting comments, blocking people from comments, or using the ability to use closed captioning on Facebook Live? Any of our presenters have some comments on that they want to verbally share or place information on the chat? We welcome the input.
So this is Kristen Phillips Hill. I always think we have to adapt and meet our constituents on the platforms that they are using. I am on Instagram and actually link my Instagram account back to my web page so that it creates a photo gallery where people can just go and see pictures, and it seems to be very well received. I've not engaged with TikTok. I have some questions with regard to that, and have used Snapchat just in a personal way. I have 20-something children, so they're on Snapchat. Most of what I snap is food. So, with regard to blocking, hiding, deleting, I will say this: I have never blocked anyone from my social media. But I have a Facebook user policy in place, and I think it's really important. People. I always love to hear opinions that are different. I think it's great to disagree, and I really welcome healthy debate. But really do expect that users will post content that is appropriate. So we do reserve the right to remove, or I've never removed anything, but hide things that are abusive, character insults, harassment, anything that's abusive, pornographic, libelous, things like that. We will hide them. And I will tell you, just earlier as we were on this call, a post came up on social media about if a certain elected official was shot and I was on the jury, I would find them not guilty, right? And it named that certain individual. That's not appropriate, right? So those things we reserve the right to hide, as well as anything that's an endorsement, either support or opposition for candidacy of a person seeking office. Anything that's with regard to a campaign or fundraising is not appropriate on a social media platform that is essentially a taxpayer-funded platform. So that's typically how we have handled it. And certainly if you go onto my Facebook page, you can look at that policy if that's helpful.
Thank you so much, Senator Phillips Hill. I think that's a great way to end. It's just past 2 o'clock here Mountain Time. We have a slide up, that has my email address as well as my colleague, Pam Greenberg, who did a fantastic job helping put together this panel. Thanks again to CTA. Thanks to our speakers and all of you in the audience for participating today and for your comments. We'll be scanning the chat box to make sure we didn't miss anything and get back to you if we did. Again, the webinar today has been recorded and it'll be available on our website within the week. Our webinar is now adjourned. Thank you.